Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today I'm honored to be with the scholars from the edge of time, Nicholas Diak and Michele Brittany. Greetings and welcome, most scholars.
Oh, greetings and welcome, Hercules. And we are here with our scholarly cat, Cecily.
As per usual.
Oh, Cecily.
Per usual, she is our third unofficial member of the Scholars from the Edge of Time. But thank you for the wonderful intro.
Good to see you again, sir.
Yes.
See you too. She's always welcome.
I'm sure she appreciates that too.
Oh, she loves to be here.
Yes.
Any other time we do a podcast or anything else, she's usually it's like doing her thing, but nope, every month when it's this time, she has to be in here.
Mm-hmm.
She just has to.
Yeah.
She's a good girl. What's going on with your bad self, sir?
Not much really. I'm still going back and forth with the book with Llewellyn, so I contributed a chapter to that. My chapter got edited a bunch of times. When you deal with bigger publishers, that happens, I guess. So it's still being changed, and it bears very little resemblance to what I originally wrote. So that should be coming out either at the end of this year or sometime early next year. So I'm excited about that. I'm trying to find a narrower focus for my writing at this point. So I'm playing with different ideas, and I'm excited about that. And all is well. How about with you guys?
Well, we've got some different projects going on. I guess the first one is I continue to work on the mummy collection that I'm co-editing with one of our colleagues, Sean Woodard. So it's no harm ever came from reading a book, critical essays. And so we're excited. We are working on the first review. We sent back all of our edits. So those should be coming in about another week or so. Then we'll review those. We'll probably have some more edits to send back out to the writers. We actually built in 3 reviews. So it's not unusual to go through a few back and forth.
Oh, yeah.
And then after the third, we'll go ahead and work to put together the manuscript for the publisher, and then they'll peer review it. So we'll probably have some more edits at that time. But I think between Sean and I, we're catching the big ones, making sure that everything's sussed out and, pretty clean by the time we go to the publisher. So it's an exciting project. Obviously, I love mummies in Egypt and all that. So it's been a good project, and I'm looking forward to when I can actually hold it in my hand, which is still a long ways away. But anyway, that's one of my projects.
It'll come before you know it.
It will. How about you?
I'm in the exact same boat as Michele, except with the Emmanuel book. So my month since July has been reading the essays that have been turned into me for the different Emmanuel and Black Emmanuel films. That's a solo effort. Michele, she has a co-editor. I'm doing this one solo, but Michele will be a part of it. She's writing an essay for it, so I still got to finish my own essay. But so no, that it's kind of cool to be back into editing a book. The first one I did solo was the Peplum book. So I think Emmanuel is. I was going to say about as far as from Peplum as you can get, but that's not true because Laura Gimser, Black Emmanuel, was in quite a few sword and sorcery stuff, and so I guess it's all there. So that's been the major project. Kind of all the smaller stuff has been kind of on hold a little bit just to kind of crank out this book. So it's exciting to have like a nice big project.
Yeah. Other things that I'm working on. My company downsized and I lost my job.
Boo!
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I understand it's a business decision and I completely understand that. And maybe it's at a time when I need to be looking at maybe changing focus a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, I'm still looking to continue writing and editing, but maybe it'll be in a slightly different, industry than what I've been working in. So that way I can learn new skills and industry understandings from what I've been working in. Yes, the cat. So because I've had, I've been focused in on job hunting, obviously. I've had a little more time for house projects. So I have a little list that I've been working on. And so I've been working on some house projects and come on, Cecily. How about you? Back to you.
After a hiatus, we'll be recording our first episode of HP Lovecast in quite a few months. So we're excited to be back in that. We just needed to take a little break from it for other stuff, especially our book stuff. So we watched the movie Glorious with Ryan Quatten and J.K. Well, the voice of J.K. Simmons. So all you fans of Spider-Man out there can hear him. It's about a movie. A guy is trapped in a rest stop bathroom with a Cthulhu deity in there, and so it's very Samuel Beckett, I guess, but in a public restroom and Cthulhu monsters. It was a fun movie, so I guess stay tuned for later in the month. We'll be dropping that episode on our HP Lovecast podcast.
Awesome.
Yep. I think that's really it for me. I'm working on some crafting and things like that and looking to get a website up soon. Or well, not a website, but I think I'm going to start with a Facebook and start, posting my projects that I'm working on. So that'll be fun. And also, kind of focus my creative efforts a little more than they have been, which has been kind of a little bit all over. So I think that'll be good for me. And I think that's, besides, being the resident cat mom to 8 furry children that keep me very busy throughout the day, I think that kind of wraps up what I'm kind of working on and focused on.
Yeah, same here. Just mostly it's the book thing. I mean, I still got small projects, comic book reviews, and other stuff that I crank out now and then just feel like I have a little bit of prolificness going on out there. So, with that in mind, we've come to the Scholars of Edge time this time with a movie to talk about again. So we are going kind of outside our wheelhouse with this film. We will be talking about the movie Pilgrimage. Y'all can see that. I had never heard of this movie until a couple years ago. This was if y'all recall, I was trying to do a medieval book a couple years ago that didn't pan through, but one of the abstracts I received was on this film. And so I plucked it up with the anticipation that if that project went through, I was going to eventually have to watch the film. That didn't quite happen, but so the movie has been there on the peplum shelf, metaphorically, because the shelf hasn't existed all that long. But you know what I'm saying. Yeah. It's been there just like, hey, watch me at some point. So we figured after doing all the 1960s stuff for a while there, we did She is Conan last month. Hey, let's do something that's still more modern, that's not In the Name of the King 2. That's actually a serious film. And so we watched Pilgrimage. So that's why we'll be talking about that film, how we came into provenance with it. So a plot synopsis. Here we go. In 1209 AD, Giraldus, a Cistercian monk, arrives at a monastery in a remote area of Ireland. It is Ireland. Correct. Okay, I accidentally miswrote Ireland. Well, I never mind. In a remote area of Ireland, charged with procuring and escorting a holy relic back to Rome. The head of the monastery dispatches a handful of priests, Diarmid, Curan, Cathal, and Ruah, along with a nameless mute who had washed ashore a few years prior, who does jobs and tasks for the priests, all to protect the relic on its trip to Rome. Shortly after leaving the monastery, a thunderstorm breaks out, and a lightning bolt strikes the ornate box that houses the relic, but the box is not damaged. The party travels through Gaelic lands and sees their pagan glyphs and sacrifices about. Giraldus is disgusted, but the priests are more respectful of their surroundings. The party eventually encounters an army of Baron de Mervel, a Norman, along with his son Raymond, who are leading excursions into Gaelic territory. Merville wants to assist the priests to guarantee his salvation, but also to see the relic, which he feels will be a morale booster to his men. The relic turns out to be a large rock, one that was used to stone St. Matthias in Cappadocia way back in 55 AD. The next day, the party sets out, escorted by a small force led by Raymond. They encounter a destroyed bridge, which Raymond dispatches his men to hunt down the saboteurs. The monks, in turn, are ambushed by a group of Gaelic warriors who slay almost everyone. But the mute goes into a berserker rage and slays many of the Gaelic warriors along with their leader. The warriors retreat, but during the skirmish, the cart containing the relic was absconded with. The mute, Giraldus, Diarmid, and Cathal track the cart to the warriors' encampment, which they sneak into at night to recover the relic and possibly free Kirian. However, it turns out Kirian had tossed the relic from the cart. The monks then witness Raymond arrive in the camp, having made a pact with the Gaelic warriors to steal the relic. He tortures Kirian for the relic's location, but is not successful. The three priests and the mute locate the relic and keep on their quest to deliver it. The next day, they are pursued by Raymond and his men to a swampy river covered in fog. They all pray to the relic, which guides them across the river, where they discover a duo of fishermen whom they purchase a ride from. However, their boat ride is short-lived as they get caught in low tide. The fishermen and priests try to drag the boat out to deeper waters, and the mute stays behind to fend off Raymond and his men. Raymond's archer snipes a fisherman in Cathal. The mute slays Raymond and battles the remaining men. Seeing the destruction and the continuing use of violence surrounding the relic, Diarmid tries to cast it overboard. Giraldus tries to stop him, but falls overboard with the relic, sinking to the bottom of the water. The end. So,
see, you want to watch it now, don't you?
So, Michele, what did you think of The Pilgrimage?
I actually really liked it for many reasons, which I know we'll discuss. But yeah, I actually really did like the movie. I read the plot synopsis before the movie, and I was actually kind of glad that I did because
spoilers.
I know, but this movie, there was a simplicity about the movie, but there was a simplicity of the narrative. Go from point A to point B with a relic, and you're going to encounter a lot of danger along the way.
Sounds like Lord of the Rings.
Yes. But at the same time, there was a complexity because of what was going on around, not in Ireland necessarily, but all the implications beyond Ireland. You know, the engagement of the Norman people with King John, but also with Europe and the Pope and the Crusades, the Templars, the Cistercians, and things like that, and all the things that were going on religiously in other parts of the world, and how everything kind of coalesced in this movie with this relic down. And that's why there's a simplicity, but there's a lot of complexity beyond. So I actually liked all those different levels, and it really kind of reminded me of a couple of other films, which I'll touch on later. But I'll pin it for now and flip back over to you to your thoughts generally.
Unlike Miss Spoiler here, I went into she spoiled it for herself. I went in totally blind. Again, not knowing what's going on. I was pleasantly surprised. I really dug the movie, but like Michele said, there's a lot of context in this film that I'm not, again, a theologian or a medievalist or a historian like of Europe at that point at all. So I think people that are in the know on those will have a better appreciation for the narrative because they know the socio-political religious background that's going on during the time. So I'm approaching the film as just kind of here's a sword and sorcery film. Truly it is in the simple terms of get artifact from point A to point B, get the ring from the Shire to Mount Doom. It's kind of in a simplicity sort of way, but I didn't know what to expect going in, and I enjoyed it immensely. I thought it was a fantastic film. Especially since Michele knows all the stars in it. It's all these MCU people. And to me, I'm not a big MCU guy or anything. So to me, these are all unknown faces. So it just felt like kind of, this isn't like a movie that has a Bruce Willis or an Arnold Schwarzenegger in front. It just felt like a more, intimate movie that way. Now, Michele, on the other hand, is like, that's the Punisher. He's going to kick ass.
But let me qualify that. Well, I knew two of the stars were part of the MCU because, I've seen Spider-Man, The Homecoming, because of Tim Holland is in it, but also John Barenthal, who is the Punisher, and I knew about those characters. I was familiar with both of them. Actually, Richard Armitage, who was in The Hobbit, and I think his character was Thorin.
He's one of the dwarves, right?
Yeah. He is in The Hobbit, but I've seen him in like a lot of English programming because I watch a lot of British shows. So I've actually seen him in a lot of other things. But as I was reading and prepping, I did have to let Nick know that he also had an MCU connection. He was involved in the Captain America films and I think some sort of animated series or something like that. So it's just kind of interesting that there are three people that have this kind of connection. And in fact, when I was doing a little further digging, Tom Holland and John Barenthal were actually working on, I think, audition tapes and stuff for their respective roles. So I just think that's kind of interesting that they were, on set and they're recording their auditions for MCU. So, maybe it's an extension of MCU in a weird sort of way.
So have you seen the John Barenthal Punishers?
I have.
I was going to say, because I haven't. To me, the Punisher is Dolph Lundgren. I like Thomas Jane, but I've only seen his movie once, and the Laundry movie, short film he did once.
Which is also pretty good.
And I never saw Punisher Warzone, although it does have Ray Stevenson, and I'm a big Ray Stevenson fan. But to me, Dolph Lundgren is the Punisher. So I'm just going to throw this out there as kind of an asking point. John Barenthal plays the mute in this. We don't get his background, really. We only get slivers of it. What we do know is he can talk, but he doesn't. He's a mute. He only says one word in the entire film. It's at the very end. I think it's implied he is a Knight Templar or some other warrior that has been part of the Crusades and not in a very nice way. His back is covered in whiplashes. He's got a big cross tattoo, so that's why I'm thinking he's a former Knight Templar. And he just, washes on a shore. This is all before the movie. So, he's doing all this work for the priests to kind of like, I'm guessing, atone for what he did. That's his way to do it, but he's extremely violent and extremely well, I shouldn't say violent. He's violent when it calls for it. He does go into a berserker rage that's hard for him to stop on it. I guess what I'm trying to get to is seeing that character. Is that a Punisher type character? Does this his character in this translate to? That's a good performance for the Punisher.
I think there are elements of the Punisher, like I think the biggest one is the conflict that he has, understanding what the backstory is to the Punisher and that conflict and the use of violence. I would say that the mute character is a little bit of a departure for that, because there is a redemptive theme that runs throughout this film that I picked up. And he is one of the characters that's seeking redemption through his servitude with the monk community. And that is not Punisher, really. But I think the violence and that kind of berserker violence that he goes into when he's trying to protect the Tom Holland character, because he's a young novice monk in the film. And I think that he, like you said, I think when the situation calls for it, he's definitely on task to protect, because that's the glimpse that we see of his past. The Punisher is a bit different, but you do see a little bit of shades of it. So I mean, I think he does a great job in this film. And I mean, I honestly, I do like the Dolph Lundgren. I like the Thomas Jane version. We haven't seen the Ray Stevenson version, but I also like his version of the Punisher. And he does come off, he's always kind of a tough guy. And so he has an interesting history, actually. He studied over in Russia, and he was discovered while he was in Russia on, some sort of, study abroad type of thing. And that's kind of his start into, I believe, acting was kind of from that time. So he's got a unique look. Yeah. And I mean, I think he works in the role. And that's honestly something that where you didn't really know all the people going into it, and I knew a few. It didn't spoil my enjoyment and my suspension of belief of these characters existed in a historical context. And I think they all three of them, and the others beyond, did a wonderful job with their performances. One of the things, and I'm not sure if we'll end up touching on it down the road, but one of the things that I really liked was the multi-language use in this film.
There's English, French, Gaelic.
Gaelic, yeah. It's those three. And we've got a cat being naughty somewhere. Oh, yeah, in there. And I felt that lent a sense of authenticity.
Oh, okay. Now I got stuff to say. Now, okay, authenticity. There we go. That's
while this is not, this is not an authentic telling, there are, I think, shades of it. And I mean, I do believe that back then you would have had, like, the main monk. I'm trying to remember his name.
Which monk? Hercules?
The one that was driving the carts. Brother Carrion.
Yeah, he's kind of like
he's the multilingualist. Like, he knows English, he knows the French. But
the more world-traveled one as well.
Yeah, so it makes sense that he would understand. Where Tom Holland, he's more Gaelic. He had grown up there. So he's talking in Gaelic sometimes, a little bit of English sometimes, because he probably has heard it from Brother Carrion. But I actually liked the different languages that you were hearing through the film, and obviously the French, because of the Norsemen who had come over from Brittany and had come over to the island.
No.
So I'm sorry, you want to say some stuff about authenticity?
No, this is a good segue on authenticity, because I got stuff to say about authenticity, while at the same time plugging my book, The New Peplum.
An awesome book. I recommend it.
Around the Kitty Tail.
It has an honored place on my Peplum shelf.
So there's an essay in The New Peplum called There Are No Boundaries for Our Boats by Steve Nash. And I think I brought this up on a prior vidcast on something, but that essay is all about the TV show Vikings. and how, especially the Blood Eagle process, how Vikings achieves its authenticity through grisly, grisly violence. And this movie, as kind of unassuming as it looks, you know, it's just a collage cover. This movie is violent. It is almost grotesque in its violence, but it's not like a splat stick or a bloodfest film. It goes for that gritty realist violence. So for examples, the mute smashes a person's face in with the edge of a shield. He just smashes his face in. And of course, it shows it. It's like the fire extinguisher scene from Irreversible. For the few listeners who've seen that movie, that's a deep cut. The one of the brothers gets stabbed with this barb and gets his intestines twirled around and ripped out. There's some poachers that get their hands severed. You get to see their bloody hands eaten by dogs. And there's lots of shots of like arrows and swords going through people's heads. And so it is extremely cringy, realistic, gritty violence. And I'm thinking, as simple as the story is, get magical artifact from A to B. And the artifact is a rock of all things, but it's, you know, it's a blessed rock. It's a Jesus rock. How do you ground? This is supposed to be a historic movie, 1200s Templars and Normans and all that stuff. How do you make that more grounded in reality? And I think this movie, because this movie came out in the era of the TV show Vikings, and I think that's just kind of what a lot of movies and TV shows were doing back then, is how do we make this thing seem more real, more authentic, more grounded in something? Let's portray as grisly violence as possible. And I think this movie does that, to add credence to, here's this magical artifact of a rock. How do we anchor this? Let's have someone's intestines get ripped out.
Well, and Raymond even talks about how that is a tool that he had found on his crusades. And it's one that was used to torture, to get the truth out of people. So there again is that connection to the crusades. And this is a part of
a little bit of history. I don't know if they really used the barb or not. It is funny. He keeps it tucked in his glove like a James Bond gadget.
I know.
It's kind of silly, but it's cool.
It was kind of, well, he wants to keep it close to his arms, so I guess he doesn't get it used on him. So
I guess for the Crusades, it was a sci-fi gadget. You know, it was something very different, very exotic, and surprising, I imagine.
And it actually fits, because, you know, you think about.
To be honest, I thought he was going to get stabbed in the eye with it. And his eyeball going to be poked out.
Yeah, I'm glad that didn't happen. I did not want to see that.
The movie could have gone in that route, though. As hyper violent as it was, it could have gone that route.
But at the same time that it was hyper violent, on the flip side, it was actually beautifully. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. The shots that they had throughout were just, you got to see so much of the locale. You got to see lots of vistas. There's even one shot of the monks in their very, you know, crude church worship place, and the camera is inside. And so you see all the brothers looking towards the camera, and they're chanting. So like the Georgian chant type music. And way in the background, you see the one monk, the sister monk that's coming, and he is blurred out. But because of the white robe that is, you know, the kind of robe that they wear is very white, so it's very stark, even blurred, as he's slowly coming into view, and it's a wonderful shot.
Now, according to the John McClane history of white tank tops from Die Hard, how white is that robe going to stay through the film?
Not very.
Not very white.
It gets clean at the end, but no, you know, there's some reviews written, and I think the Los Angeles Times, they said for all of its bloody and violent genre trappings, Pilgrimage is a gorgeously shot film that carefully renders the details of this fascinating historical period. And that was Katie Walsh, who wrote that in her review of the film back in 2017. And I do think that's true. I mean, you always have, even in like horror films where you'll have like full on suspense, horror, you know, blood, and then you'll have that pause of, you know, something funny. It might be kind of a dark humor or something, but it helps to kind of reground you and get you set for the next thing. And I think the cinematography in this film does some of that work.
It's kind of a, I'm going to say a nice feat. Maybe this is just a you know, leaps and bounds of filmmaking as compared to the 70s and 80s, because there's chunks of this film that, you know, it's going for the gritty realism, not just violence, but, you know, these are simple folk, simple houses, everything's grimy and dirty. It takes a page out of like the Monty Python and the Holy Grail slash Hawk the Slayer type, you know, sword and sorcery, where everything's foggy and gray and stuff like that. But while those movies look a little bit more dreary, and now Monty Python dreary to comedic effect, while Hawk the Slayer is just a little budget, this one still looks like good and just yeah, well shot. It capitalizes on that, you know, the Irish countryside for sure. Even like the ending sequence when they're in the water, everything still looks
there's a muted
yeah
color palette that's used, and that would be one of the other things that I would say is like some of the costuming and the use of color to convey or misconvey you know, intentions based on colors that are used. You know, like you traditionally think that white is going to be pure, and from the outside, you know, that's your impression. But then you find as you go through the movie that the person represented in white is not really so white. And again, I think that goes back to some of those deeper themes of, you know, redemption or lack thereof, because we do find out more of Geraldus, the sister in Monk's history through Raymond, as he's throwing insults out across the river to him to kind of aid him and get him to talk.
well, there's a lot of themes in this film. I don't know if we'll get to all of them, but like the idea of powers and symbols, you know, is the rock really match closer to symbol? But you know, the big one is definitely the religious take, and I think one of the main themes, especially in terms of the violence in this film, is kind of summed up when Giraldus, you know, sums it up for himself at the end. One of the things that Giraldus did is he's one of the political religious folks, I'm just going to call it. He's in it for the power. He really is. He can be as pious as he want, but you know, he turned his own dad in order to claim
for heresy
in order to claim his lands and money. But you know, he sums it up by saying, you know, his conscience is clear to do that, and he basically said it's because his father, you know, didn't lose his faith. His father lost his fear of the church, you know, the church as a power. And that's what Giraldus wants, is that power. That religion is a power, a force, and a control. We're bringing civilization to these Gaelic lands. We are, you know, converting the pagan stuff, and it's more of a power thing for him, contrasted to the monks that were guarding the relic, who are the more simple folk that are more in tune with their surroundings. They get along with the Gaelic people. They're more, you know, into the solitude and prayer, and more, you know, insular. You know, they don't want to be concerned with the outside world. And I think that's kind of, you know, they stay away from the violence. Now the violence is brought to them through, you know, Giraldus, basically.
Yeah, and you know, kind of all the political and religious maneuvering that's going on through the film actually reminded me of a Sean Connery film that I think was from the 80s called Name of the Rose.
Wait, is that the
with Christian Slater?
No. The Umberto Eco story? Isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's the Umberto Eco story. You know, a historical novel, and I got some sense of that, kind of the structure, because in Name of the Rose, they're actually trying to Sean Connery's character is trying to resolve a mystery of a murder that happens at a monastery. But you also have the larger things of religious things that are going on, and you know, the greed and the mistaken belief that, you know, there are certain people that can be religious, and yet don't need to be pious. You know, that's for the more common folk to be pious, and they should, you know, understand that. Whereas the religious, they feel that they have all the power. And so that was similar in Name of the Rose. And so I think that if, you know, people watching have enjoyed that film, they might enjoy this film. The other one that I was going to mention is Valhalla Rising, which was directed by Nicholas Roeg. Roeg?
Roeg? Oh, no, no, wait.
Yeah, Roeg.
Is this
yeah.
same guy did Driver? No, never mind. That's a different guy. Never mind.
Yeah. But that one starred Mads Mikkelsen. He is a mute through I believe the entire film as well. And that has a lot of religious themes, and it's done. I don't remember even when
Nicholas Winding Refn, and that is the guy. Yeah, that is the guy from Driver. That movie Drive. That movie ruled.
Yeah. So that was in 2009. So quite earlier, but there's also a lot of authenticity to the film. I don't remember the time period. I think it was even earlier than what this film is representing. But there's a lot of violence, but there's also, again, a lot of cinematography that's very beautiful. It's very gritty. It's not got a lot of talking. And that was one of the things that I noticed with this film, is that there's dialogue in it, but it is kind of minimal at times. It does rely more on action. And I was actually looking to see how long the film was, and I was actually surprised it's 96 minutes, and it has like one really big fight scene, and then it's got the kind of battle scene at the end, or, you know, a few people fighting at the end. But the rest of it is just trying to get
walking and talking
or looking around, you know, reflecting on what's going on. Like, you get a lot of Tom Holland's character, who is, you see his journey, his kind of hero journey, as the novice gains strength through his belief and through his faith, which really balances and juxtapose to Geraldus, who is supposed to be the more mature one, the more worldly one, the one who has all this experience, and yet he in the end is really does not have the faith that he should have, because he makes decisions and he says things that really go against what he represents.
I would say his stuff totally encapsulates the brand of religion that he represents.
Oh, well, yeah.
So
that's a very good point.
So you know what this movie doesn't have?
Women.
Ladies. There is not a single lady in this film.
Nope.
There may be one at the very beginning when they stone St. Matthias, but I doubt it. It didn't occur.
Yeah,
there may be.
Yeah,
but there's no women characters.
There's nobody that you see for any period of time on the screen. Yeah.
So but even though it's a totally dude movie, it's not like a masculine movie per se. Like Geraldus is, I'm going to say, a bit more on the, I don't want to say feminine side, but he's the luxurious side. He's clad in white and looks a little fancy and everything. So like because we bring up sword and sandal and sword and sorcery, it's very body centric. So this would be this is a medieval film, so it's bordering on the neo-peplum genre, depending on how you kind of take it and everything. But this isn't like a body-centric film. There's no nudity in it, which I'm shocked. Usually a movie like this that's pretty hyper violent, you'd probably get at least one dude butt. There's no
dude butt.
There's no
Sad
dude.
to say.
The only person whose body is on display is the mute's body. He does like take off his shirt to show off his back. When he's like praying, you get to see it. And at the end, he takes off his shirt, but it's for a practical reason. He wraps his arm in his shirt to make, kind of basically a shield of sorts out of it. So it's not a body-centric film. This movie is definitely more, despite as violent it is, it's definitely a soul movie. And that's, what I mean by that is inner soul, be it religious or not religious. It actually made me think of, and don't laugh, a movie that we talked about a couple months ago, and that was The Knight and the Dragon, the Spanish sci-fi sword and sorcery film, which was a comedic critique at religion, while this is more of a gritty whatnot. But the noble person in that film, the Conde, and he's got two people. He's got Klaus Kinski's alchemist character that takes care of his medical needs, but he has Father, I think it's Aldo, who takes care of his spiritual needs, because the guy is now at the end of his life. He's done all these supposed bad things, so of course he needs to like wipe the slate really clean so he can be saved and have a better afterlife. And that's one of the characters in Pilgrimage. It's actually Raymond's father, the Baron.
Yeah.
He's doing all this stuff, but even Raymond calls him out for it. He's not concerned about the battlefield anymore. He's not concerned about his men anymore. He's more concerned about his salvation and his well-being in the afterlife. And so as awkward as it is, I think The Pilgrimage has a little bit in common with space dragons.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, I think those are themes that we see in other films. Like there's usually an older, wiser person who's, getting close to the end of their life. And so they're, thinking back, and they're now concerned about wiping that slate clean that the Baron has. And yet you have the son, the upstart, who is going to be around after his dad is gone, and he needs to make a name for himself, and he wants to make a place. And he is a rebellious and violent person. One of the things that I think that is a good point. It's a different film. But it is one of those themes that we do see often in the sword films that we've watched.
One of the other things that's interesting is, because again, I think this movie is very multi-layered, be it, looking at violence, looking at religion, looking at, your view on the world, stuff like that. It's also the idea of, symbols and power. So like the relic itself, the relic is a rock that was smashed the head of St. Matthias, and then after St. Matthias's head got smashed, supposedly the thunder came down, the ground opened up and swallowed all the pagans that stoned him to death. And so that's what's left is the rock. It's a holy item. And so when you watch the film, depending on your viewpoint, everything magical that this rock does, there's an actual like secular counterpoint to it, such as the chest that the rock is in gets struck by lightning. Well, that is kind of, maybe that's God doing that, or maybe it's just a chest that got struck by lightning. At the end, when they're fording the river and they're holding the rock, you could maybe the rock is guiding them, or it's because there's two fishermen on the other side of the river ringing their bell and they can follow it. So there is that idea of, is the rock really magical / blessed / holy, and it does have these powers, or is it more, secular type thing? It's just a rock, or it's, the rock is its power is because it is a symbol of all that stuff. And even Raymond comments on that. It's like, I could just F it. We could use any rock. He even calls that out. I don't need the rock. I can just grab any other rock, and that's the thing.
And as long as people have belief and faith, and you have these secular things that happen around it, then you have a new rock.
Mm-hmm.
I think what kind of struck me was the fact that there's a reason for that rock to be out in the middle of Ireland in some desolate place versus the bones of Saint Matthias, which you would think would be more important to have than
they actually say that they do say the people. I don't know if the monks said it, but other people were expecting to see the remains in there, and then they saw that it's a rock. I don't think it was the main monks. It was the soldiers or the king. The king wanted to lay his eyes on it.
And see, that was one of my thoughts, and I didn't look it up because Saint Matthias did exist, but I think the story is that he actually lived to be an older person and died of like natural causes, that he wasn't like, there was some other thing about him becoming a saint.
Wait, you're saying this movie may have taken historic liberties and it's relying on movie tropes and ultra violence to make it seem real that it really happened?
I'm sorry. But I mean, it makes a good story, doesn't it? And it made for a very interesting
I buy into movie.
It. I mean, I think it can be realistic. I mean, because gosh, I have a crucifix that's from Rome, and it has a piece of the catacomb. It's got a little teeny weeny piece of dust from the catacomb, a piece of rock, in that crucifix. So why not there be this bigger rock in this, that's a holy relic. It's all what you believe.
Now I would say, I don't want to say it's a down part of the film, but it is kind of expected that there was no way that rock was going to make it to Rome. That's the way the movie is set up. As much as like I'm cheering for Frodo to get the ring to Mount Doom and save the land, that was not happening in this film. So the rock actually being cast in the water is the most suitable fate for it. Is it just a rock? Is it an actual blessed rock? Who knows? It's better off that whatever it is doing, it's increasing violence, it's becoming a symbol for violence in the name of religion or whatnot. It's best to be at the bottom of the river. But I am surprised. I'm shocked that as hyper violent as this movie was, that aside from St. Matthias at the very beginning, which you don't even know that's what's going on, that someone else did not get clubbed by the rock in this film. I expected that. The priest at the end is getting assaulted by a girl. It's like, take that, and then they both fall over or something. So I'm shocked that it didn't come full circle with someone else not getting cudgeled by the magic rock.
Yeah, sorry, spoiler.
But I think that's about all I gotta say. You got anything else?
This is more of a personal anecdotal, and that is that I had the opportunity, and of course took it. I've been to Scotland a couple of times earlier in my life, and one of the abbeys that I visited a couple of times is Melrose Abbey. And I did go back and look it up because as I was reading about Giraldus and his cistern, monk group. And I did find out that the Melrose Abbey was part of that church group. And it still exists. I mean, it's obviously in ruins, but weddings are held there and things like that. And the cisterns were actually known for their architecture. And so I was just watching a YouTube show today, and they showed the Villiers Abbey and Church, which is also a Cistercian is architecture, and they look a lot alike. So Melrose Abbey in the lowlands of Scotland that I visited a couple of times has a little bit of connection with Giraldus character's sister and group. So I just thought that was an interesting antidote.
I do want to say, even though he's basically the second villain of the film, Raymond's the main villain, but even though Giraldus is the other villain, depending on perspective, I actually, as slimy as a character as he was, I actually was with him in a weird sort of way. I believed him as a character.
Well, and maybe that's good, because when he turned down, it makes it all the more dramatic that you have someone that you basically have faith that they're representing, the truth, and then to find out that there was personal motivations and greed that was leading this person rather than the real religious. And they were actually, the Cistercian were actually in decline by this time in the 1200s when this movie kind of takes place.
I guess the type of character it is could have just been a one-dimensional fire and brimstone type character, but a lot of the characters definitely have more stuff going on from the mute to him. Well-crafted movie.
Yeah, and very good acting from everyone. Good collection, well written, well executed film.
Wow.
2 thumbs up. Highly recommended.
Yep, recommended.
I will have to find a suitable picture of the DVD cover and put that up, the link. Wow, that's amazing. The only thing I have to share about that is I grew up in a very medievalist type of environment with the Greek Orthodox Church. And we had these phylakta, they called them, or protective charms. They had an eye on them, and they were blue triangles essentially, but they were supposed to have shavings from the true cross in there, and that protected you. And people were always relating tales of angels coming to them and making demands that they undertake certain actions, and that seemed very unpleasant. I used to pray that angels leave me alone and not give me any test.
It's so funny that you bring up angels, because early in the film they actually talk about an angel that I can't remember the exact story.
So the story within the film, of course, it's myth in the film, folklore in the film, but whatever. Is Vikings came to get their paws, their typical, looting and whatnot, and they were about to get their paws on the relic in the film, and thunder clapped, and an angel came down and just like destroyed them all, and that's foreshadowing for what the mute is going to do later to Raymond and his men. So but again, they don't show any of that in the film. That's just a tale being regained.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you brought up angels, because I was like, oh, that reminded me of one of the first acts, the stories that are conveyed, that happened much earlier. So,
and that's a very powerful part. Like, I remember stories people were telling me that statues in front of churches would come to life and throw stone books at people and smite them for a variety of reasons. So that type of belief persisted, at least until the modern age, because I grew up with those beliefs. And thank you so very much for bringing this movie into better focus. And now I want to find it and watch it.
Recommend it. It's not to knock She is Conan from last month, but even though, again, I'm not a theologian or a historian, Pilgrimage was very accessible. I'll put it that way, as compared to She is Conan. So despite it being super, super violent, it's a simple story as well. Again, get artifact point A to point B, so it's accessible. It's an easy gateway to get into it that if you're someone like me who doesn't know the history and context, you could still enjoy it. And if you're someone who does know all that stuff, you're probably going to double enjoy it. And if you're a fan of MCU characters, you're probably going to
really
triple
gonna
enjoy it.
We're gonna revisit Moon Knight at some point because I'm an MCU person also, and we touched upon it before in a previous episode. But now they're making a second season,
Oh,
and
cool.
Oh my gosh, are they really?
that's what I heard. The rumors on YouTube. I want to thank you, and I want to thank Cecily also for her commentary in detailed language. And how can people find scholars from the edge of time and enter the wider universe of the your H.P. Lovecraft podcast and all your other activities?
Sure. So mine's quick and easy. I do have a website that I don't visit very much, and I do someday I'll rectify that. But I do have an author page at Amazon, and I am got
Instagrams.
Instagram, and I'm working on Facebook. It's not public, but if you send me a message, I can answer that way. But the real social media person is sitting next to me, so he'll tell you all his details.
So yeah, I'm at nickdiak.com. Links to all my social media there, all the podcasts that were on there. H.P. Lovecraft stuff is there. Any like self-published essays I put up there as well, but I'm very gregarious and easy accessible from there. So yeah.
And if you comment that our cat is beautiful, then you'll be our friends for life.
Yeah, isn't she the prettiest?
I'll have to put something to that effect in the description of the show. This should be up sometime tomorrow.
Excellent.
And again, I want to thank you. I wanted to share one quick story before we wrap up. How I discovered H.P. Lovecraft. It was back in the 70s, I believe. And somebody told me about this great author, H.P. Lovecraft. And he lent me a book and it told me about some of the stories. So I randomly, found one of the stories and I read it. And I returned the book like the next day because this whole story was building up to a giant's elbow being dug up in a basement and driving somebody mad. So I didn't think that this was my cup of tea. And then when I got into Robert E. Howard around the same time, and I started learning about Robert E. Howard, I discovered that Howard and Lovecraft were friends, and that a lot of Lovecraft stuff was actually in Howard and vice versa. So I gave it a second chance, and in the second chance, I discovered his dream cycle, which so that's what's kept me a Lovecraft fan all these years. Mostly his dream cycle with, occasionally his other stuff as well. So again, thank you very much, and I thank you for keeping the tradition of H.P. Lovecraft alive in our world and all the wonderful things you do. You might not be theologians, but you're storytellers and critics excellent. So have a wonderful evening.
Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.